Okay, you can begin. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, thank you everybody for being here. Welcome. Welcome back to our Distinctive Voices in IR Masters in the Making virtual series that the research program on the theory and practice of international relations at the Institute of International Economic Relations in Athens, in collaboration with the Department of International Relations at Ege University and the Department of Political Science at Justus Liebig University Giessen organized. Today, I'm truly excited because we are hosting Dr. Bezen Coşkun Balamir, a great scholar from our neighboring Turkey, neighboring to us in Greece, whom I thank very much for accepting our invitation and for being here with us today to share her research and insights. Thank you very much, Dr. Balamir. Bezen Balamir Coşkun is an international relations scholar from Turkey who has been conducting research on different aspects of international studies, with a particular emphasis on security studies, conflict analysis, and conflict resolution. Since 2005, Dr. Coşkun has engaged in research and analysis, both as a researcher in several research centers and as a lecturer in higher education institutions. She received her Ph.D. in international relations from Loughborough University in the UK and a master's degree in development and international studies from Aalborg University in Denmark. She's teaching currently at Ege University in Turkey and is coordinating the IIER Policy Center platform. A recurrent theme in her research is the humanitarian aspects of international security, with a particular emphasis on the gender aspects of conflict and post-conflict processes. And in her area of expertise, she has written several books, book chapters, and articles in peer-reviewed journals. So our speaker today is present to expound upon a persistently relevant topic in the theory and practice of international relations, regendering IR and in conceptualizing the women, peace and security agenda. In this lecture, the discipline's main paradigms, including the feminist approach, are critically reviewed, and it will instigate, we hope that it will instigate an interesting discussion and many questions by the audience. Just a little bit about Dr. Coşkun's lecture, which is based on Dr. Cynthia Enlow's book that was published in 1989, Bananas, Beaches and Bases, where Dr. Enlow asked the question, where are the women, meaning in international politics? Her question was a stark reminder of the lack of feminist approaches to international relations. Enlow and other feminist scholars, I remind you that a few months ago we hosted Professor Ann Tickner. We're very honored that she gave a lecture for us in the Distinguished Virtual Lecture Series. Have revealed how IR theories explain security through the eyes and sensibilities of men. In this context, feminist scholars have criticized the absence of the gender dimension in the dominant theories and practices of IR. And in this review, a particular emphasis is placed on the United Nations landmark resolution that was passed in 2000, 1325, on women, peace and security, which is considered a significant international gender equality initiative and a challenge to the conventional global peace and security architecture. Before I begin, I have to thank, as always, Ms. Stella Miliotti, Mr. Dimitris Polalis, our technician, and Professor Haralabos Tsardanidis for their constant support to materialize all virtual events of the research program. And I have to also thank the co-organizers and my co-hosts in this series, Professor Ferit Asli Erkul Jorgensen and Dr. Alexander Reichwein. Finally, I would like to thank the scholars, students, and researchers who are honoring us with their attendance tonight. So, Professor Balamir Coşkun, now I turn it over to you, and we are eager to begin this interesting seminar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Effie. Thank you for all coming and joining us. It's really great to see you all in the last IIER seminar webinar of the year. So with the end of the year approaches, we have wars, conflict, disasters, and humanitarian crises all around us. Thus, it's important to revisit our discipline's theoretical and conceptual frameworks and rethink the woman's role and place in international peace and security. First, I want to thank my dear colleague Effie and the IIER team for inviting and encouraging me to give this talk. I studied international relations after the end of the Cold War. It sounds like ancient history, or as one of my professors word, it was another lifetime. In the IR discipline, for a long time, we didn't see these two words, concepts next to each other, gender and IR. Then the word change, IR discipline change, and our way of making sense of international politics change. Today, I'm a member of Women in Foreign Policy Initiative in Turkey, also a Sustainable Development Goal 5 initiative member. Women in Foreign Policy Initiative today celebrated its 10th anniversary in 2024, and one of our main focus is women's place, role in international peace and security. In this context, I'm grateful to Effie, Aslı, and Alex to provide a space for today's seminar. So let's start. I have my colleagues, very close colleagues, and also my students here. So let's start from the very beginning, like after the Big Bang in international relations. International relations as a discipline come into the existence after the First World War. Post-war conditions and the primary concerns of the period led to the establishment of a discipline prioritized military power, survival, and security. And all these concepts associated with high politics and masculinity. So until 1980s, the discipline was dominated by theories and approaches that ignore the woman's perspective. And Tigner, Effie mentioned that, who gave a lecture here last semester, was one of the first IR scholars who questioned the genderless aspect of the discipline. According to Tigner, when the state is considered as a single unit, many variables within the state, like religion, class, gender, they are excluded in the analysis. Feminist scholars like Tigner and Cynthia Enloe argued that the exclusion of half of humanity from theoretical level cannot provide a holistic understanding of world affairs. Tigner's intervention coincided with the second wave of feminist movements in the West, and feminist international relations has become one of the critical approaches to IR. The third debate between positivists and post-positivists also paved way for the question of where are the women? So since 1990s, this question has been asked more than often, and critics of the basic assumptions and concepts of international relations have become more pronounced. Recognition of feminist approach in international relations wasn't easy, even though with the end of the Cold War, we saw the rise of theories that, propose new worldviews for the international system. Many of these theories and approaches still adopted a state-centered view. Thus, feminist theory had a difficult path. Although there are feminists expressing different worldviews within feminist IR theory, each scholar considered the social constructed differences between men and women through a gender perspective. One of the main critiques of the international relations, which is clearly defined by feminists as male-dominated discipline, and it ignores the experience of women. They argue that, particularly Enloe and Tigner, they argue that the image of man as possessing rationality, logic, and scientific thinking defines the male character in theories, while emotionality and non-analytical thinking are attributed to women. Feminist scholars also criticize realist authors, classical realist authors like Hans Morgenthau, for defining the man as the one who has the power to govern the state. Masculinity is accepted as a norm of governance, and women have no place in it. Realists argue that a good political leader or statesman should possess the virtues associated with masculinity, such as being warlike, courageous, independent, rational, etc. But these qualities are also part of the ideal male type. In traditional international relations, the levels of analysis are individual, national, and systemic level, as you know, and the national and systematic explanation are used in most of the relations between these units. For a long time, issues such as religion, race, class, and gender also not included in these levels of analysis and cause an incomplete understanding of intrastate and interstate problems. Feminist scholars draw attention to the absence of the woman in this analysis, and they argue that gender should be included in the discipline as a level or unit of analysis, noting that the intrastate factors are also influential in the behavior and decision-making process of states within the system. So during the Cold War, developments in the field of international politics were evaluated from hierarchical perspective as high and low politics. Security issues related to the nation states were focused on military security under the same perspective. And issues other than the military issues, which were determined as high politics, were not included in the field of security. However, in the post-Cold War period, so-called low politics issues such as humanitarian, cultural, and social issues gained prominence, and they started to be included in the field of security. So under the influence of feminist authors who have mostly developed analysis on issues such as human rights, minority rights, globalization, and migration, feminist theory has begun to take place within a critical understanding of security and revealed new perspectives on security. So these new perspectives cover a wide range of debates, including the inclusion of gender in security issues. Feminist international relations theory also challenges the knowledge-power relations proposed not only by realist theory, but also by many traditional theories. And feminist international relations theory offers an alternative understanding of global order through a normative perspective. So this normative perspective implies that it is possible to establish an egalitarian world order different from the current world. Feminist academics and the researchers, they emphasize that individuals should also be considered as actors in the international system, and that the gender perspective should be included in foreign policy and international relations. Feminist scholars argued that the functioning of the international system cannot be understood without the category of gender as a level of analysis. It's important to note that here there is no monolithic holistic feminism in any field of social science, including the international relations. And there are feminisms that develop in different ways, like liberal, socialist, radical, critical, post-colonial, etc., with different worldviews. As a consequence, each perspective defines feminism and gender differently, as there is no single, complete, and unified feminist theory of IR. However, for Anlo, this diversity is not a loss for theory, but an asset for incorporating different experiences into feminism. Against this theoretical background, let me talk about the feminist understanding of security, which has developed based on feminist international relations theory. The human-centered security constitutes the main theme of feminist security thought. The main rationale behind this approach is that insecurity are experienced differently by men and women. Thus, traditional perception of security, which focus on bigger issues, ignores the insecurities in women's lives. The study of war and security from a woman's perspective reveals the consequences for individual human lives and brings the devastating effects and inequalities of human life into the security context, rather than the military cost or the causes of the issue. The The exclusion of women from what traditional theory considers high politics is legitimized by an essentialist discourse of female nature. In particular, emotionality, need for protection, weakness, peacefulness, and moderation, they are associated with femininity. These associations deepening this exclusion. Tickner criticized the supposedly natural link between pacifism and female nature as follows. Quote, the association of femininity with peace supports an idealized masculinity that relies on constructing women as passive victims in need of protection. It also contributes to the claim that women are naive in matters of international politics. An enriched, less militarized conception of citizenship cannot be built on such a weak foundation, unquote. In this sense, the natural relationship established or assumed between the peace and woman is problematic. Within the masculine model, which is particularly visible in the military, women and men are expected to adopt and fulfill certain roles assigned to them. Women who are responsible for family care are excluded from the battlefield and military service because of their gender, and they can only take part in helping and support roles with a restricted inclusion. Anno argues that this exclusion only on the surface. In fact, women are constantly militarized. The militarization of women by the military is more visible, more invisible, subordinate, but ever present, if not as combatants on the front line. I can advise some of the books of Anno, including The Legendary Bananas, Beaches, and Bases, Maneuvers, The International Politics of Militarizing Women's Life, 12 Feminist Lessons of War, and the Nemo's War, Emma's War, Making Feminist Sense of the Iraq War. So Anno, in all these books, she was actually underlining how women were militarized by the military in an invisible but subordinate way of inclusion in the battlefields. Enlo argues that women are increasingly militarized and that this militarization has a way of determining and controlling the value of women. In such a society, being a military mother or wife becomes a point of pride, making them more valuable and creating a hierarchy situation among women. In Bananas, Beaches, and Bases, Enlo argues that there are three different groups of women who are militarized within and on behalf of the military, and she analyzes these groups. These three groups are prostitutes, military wives, and military nurses. They are crucial in their support for the military and the men in the military, and they constitute an indispensable element of militarism. So this categorization also negatively affects the situation of women in the military, because even if they are at the same level, women are not seen as equal to men, but as men's helpers. Drawing from the independence movements, Anno also argues that differences among women based on race, class, and sexual orientation affect their experiences, and these experiences have different but equivalent roles in the militarization process. Removing women from being subjects of war, recognizing them as innocent civilians and men as potential soldiers, and legislating in this way, reproducing sexism rather than protecting women. In this reproduction, women and children are treated as a group that is always mentioned together. They need to protect it and they need to have fought for. Confining women to this restrictive space is a necessary means for both preserving essentialist views of women and motivating men to fight. Feminist questioning of the place of women in international security also had repercussions on the policymaking domain. The UN Security Council adopted Resolution 1325 on Women, Peace and Security Agenda on 31st of October 2000. So when we go back to the title of the seminar, Regendering the IR, I saw the concept of regendering in Cockburn and Hubig's paper on regendering military based on the case of Bosnian War or the peacekeeping operations in the Bosnian War. In this paper, they introduced their vision for a regendered military, which describes an institution where gender has been mainstreamed in a transformative sense. Despite the criticism, in my opinion, the WPS, Women, Peace and Security Agenda, is the UN's noble attempt to rethink gender in international peace and security or regendering the international politics. So the resolution was a reaffirmation of the importance of women's role in the prevention and resolution of conflicts, peace negotiations, peace buildings, peacekeeping, humanitarian response, and post-conflict reconstruction. Furthermore, the resolution stressed the importance of their equal participation and full involvement in all efforts for the maintenance and the promotion of peace and security. Resolution 1325 also had a fundamental impact on the peace and security policies and practices at all levels, including national, regional, and international. So the peace and security practice of security organizations like NATO and local communities are also affected by this resolution. It was a significant step forward in understanding security issues outside traditional state security contexts. It involves two significant areas where UN member states must make visible progress. The first one is violence against women in conflict and increasing women's participation in conflict prevention and peace talks. The ratification of Resolution 1325 on women, peace and security have underlined the vitality of integrating gender perspectives into security studies. The Women, Peace and Security Agenda serves as a significant international gender equality initiative, and it is considered a challenge to the conventional global peace and security architecture. Another attempt to place gender in the heart of the IR or regendering the IR is the introduction of the feminist foreign policy. In 2014, Sweden's Social Democratic Party and Green Party coalition government, they identified themselves as feminist government, and Foreign Minister Wallström declared that they would implement a feminist foreign policy. Following Sweden, Canada, under Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, he is a self-described feminist, applied the feminist approach in the field of international humanitarian aid. France adopted the feminist foreign policy approach under the name of feminist diplomacy. In the global south, we have Mexico as the first country to adopt a feminist foreign policy approach. And in recent years, the necessity of feminist foreign policy has been debated in the US, the UK, Germany, and the EU. In its most comprehensive form, feminist foreign policy is defined as a foreign policy pursued by a state in its interactions with other states and non-state actors that aims to protect human rights and freedoms by prioritizing peace, gender equality, and environmental integrity. Note that it's not just about women, but it's for protecting human rights and freedoms, prioritizing gender equality, and environmental integrity. In this sense, feminist foreign policy aims for both sustainable development and sustainable peace. Defined in this way, feminist foreign policy includes all policies that aim to change and transform colonial, racist, patriarchal, and male-dominated power structures, and views the inclusion of the principles of freedom, rights, and justice in all areas of foreign policy, including defense, diplomacy, trade, migration, and humanitarian aid. Considering regional and global crises, such as the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war, for example, the food and energy crisis that's likely to emerge in the short term, and the climate crisis that's expected to affect the whole world in the medium-long term, feminist foreign policy appears as an alternative model for solving regional and global problems. Feminist foreign policy is not only about striving for the absence of the conflict, it's about reimagining the political and social structures of foreign policy. This will lead to the solutions to achieve sustainable security, inclusive peace, and economic development for all. In addition, policies to address gender inequalities at both the societal and global levels and to drive reforms in governance and state institutions are also fundamental to sustainable development. Feminist foreign policy practices starts from the assumption that the hierarchical structure of existing international relations leads to the exclusion and marginalization. Therefore, the powerful actors of the system have a responsibility to address ethical problems in the international system. If powerful actors move their focus on the concerns and principles underlining feminist foreign policy, the international system could be put on a normative footing. Contrary to the popular belief, feminist foreign policy, which doesn't imply pacifism, they argued that state actors should alternate between hard and soft power depending on the severity of the threats. Institutionalization, a feminist foreign policy approach in this field, and supporting the participation and representation of women in humanitarian initiatives at various levels and positions will help states to achieve their goals, becoming a global actor, at least in the field of humanitarian aid and international development. Lastly, feminist foreign policy, which is centered on the UN Security Council Resolution 1325, will also contribute to the sustainable peace. Since feminist foreign policy aims to eliminate global inequalities, especially gender inequality, which are at the root of the most conflicts, it helps global community to ultimately achieve an inclusive peace. Moreover, given the positive contribution of women to the success of peace process and to the building of sustainable peace, a sustainable global security approach will be possible through feminist foreign policy. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to hear your comments, opinions, and questions.
Thank you, Bezen, so much. We truly appreciate this lecture. Now I would like to turn it over to Professor Erkut Jorgensen, to Ashley, for her commentary.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, especially, of course, to our esteemed speaker, Bezen Coşkun Balamir, for this really insightful speech. She really gave very important highlights very important things about feminism, and of course, this is a very timely topic. So it's really an honor to be here and today discussing this important topic with you. And by the way, I also would like to express my gratitude to my colleagues, Effie and Alex, for their great collaboration and motivation all the time, and especially Effie's really hard working and encouragement all the time, which makes actually this seminar happening. So thank you so much. So if I turn back what actually Bezen was saying about how we can consider IR from a different perspective, which is more feminist, and how we can reread the discipline with different lenses, I agree with everything what she says. As she underlined, Cynthia Enlow's famous question, where are the women, has become a foundational critique in feminist discussions of IR. So this question not only points out actually the absence of women in international politics, but also reveals how traditional theories of IR have been built from a male-dominated perspective. So in her work, In Law highlighted the invisible labor of women and showed how international politics is often shaped by a masculinized view. So, similarly, Carol Cohn's analysis of the language of war and security policies argued that it is filled with masculine metaphors, which exclude the real life experiences and perspectives of women, actually. So the feminist critiques make it clear that the challenges faced by women in IR are not just individual obstacles. Also, they are also embedded within the very structures of the field. So, from this point, I also would like to remember Robert Cox and his critical theory understanding. So, in his very well known statement, he says theory is always for someone and for some purpose, which is particularly relevant here, I believe, because as he reminds us, theories are never neutral. They serve particular power structures and reinforce existing social orders. So, most traditional IR theories, from the perspective of today's discussion, shaped by male perspectives, which reflect and maintain systems that marginalize women's voices. For women in IR academia, so these barriers are obviously not limited to societal norms. They extend into professional environments as well. So gender roles often restrict women's opportunities for career advancement, reinforcing the so-called maybe here glass ceiling we are facing. So this barrier isn't just about the numbers of women in the field, but also about their access to key positions of power and decision making. Feminist scholars such as here Antigner, as also Bezen argued, she says that IR state-centric focus and its male-dominated security frameworks systematically overlook women's lived experiences, especially those related to violence, inequality, and displacement. So these dominant paradigms fail to account for the everyday insecurities faced by individuals, particularly women, whose lives are shaped by different kinds of violence and social exclusion. So, however, I mean, feminist perspectives offer here more than just a critique, obviously. They also provide a new way of thinking, one that challenges the very foundations of IR and offers the potential for its transformation. Feminist theories help us reimagine what IR could look like if we included diverse perspectives. Security, for example, should not be understood only as the absence of conflict between states, but as a broader concept that includes the safety and well-being of individuals, particularly those who are marginalized by the current power structures. So this requires a fundamental shift in how we define and how we prioritize issues in the discipline. So the inclusion of feminist perspectives in the development of IR can obviously enrich the field, and it also challenges us to rethink how theories and methodologies and the people who are making them are shaped and constructed. So feminism calls for a deeper understanding of power, not just between the states, but within societies and among individuals and among us. So it highlights the importance of intersectionality, considering how gender, race, class, and other factors interact to shape social and political experiences. So by embracing feminist theory, IR can become a more inclusive discipline which can reflect the diverse realities of the world, and it can be a more comprehensive understanding of our world. So based on these points, in conclusion, I would like to ask to our esteemed speaker, dear Bezen, building on today's discussion. So while Cynthia Enlow's "Where are the women?" is a powerful critique here or about the exclusion of women in international politics, do you think that feminist theories in IR have moved beyond this challenge to the challenge, the very assumption upon which the discipline is built, but also it is reshaping the discipline? So not only the way we think about issues like security and peace, but also the methodologies and epistemologies of IR. So can feminist approaches offer a sustainable framework to make IR more inclusive, not just for women, but also for other marginalized groups in the global political landscape? So thank you. These are my points and questions. Yes,
Uh,
Efi.
Thank you, Ashley, very much for your very interesting and to the point, in-depth commentary, as always, that help us to ground the discussion. I would like to ask Bezen to reply before we lost the train of thought, to reply to Ashley's questions. And then let's take some questions from the audience to open the floor to a discussion with students and scholars. And I also have like a small commentary on how feminism could enrich. It's not competing, but actually could enrich the mainstream IR theories. Bezen, please.
Thank you, Effie. And also we have here Burcu. Burcu is also one of the fellow feminist colleagues from Women in Foreign Policy, also in the SDG 5 network. So I'm sure she also has some comments about that. So about the, thank you, Aslı. You had really briefly summarize my thoughts in like 5 minutes. And your question about the methodology was great. I didn't edit the methodology section in my speech. I thought that maybe after the lecture, after the seminar, we can talk about that during the question and answer session. So it happens. So intersectionality is now one of the hardcore issues of the feminist approaches. So activist feminists, also the feminist scholars, feminist theoreticians, so feminist civil society organizations, we are all talking about intersectionality because women is not a homogeneous group. We all have our differences, age differences, racial, ethnicity, our languages are different. So, and we are facing the different problems based on our own differences. So intersectionality should be part of the all kinds of discussions, including the IR approaches, feminist IR approaches. So in the theory part, I really find this issue methodology analysis made by Robert Cohen. Robert Cohen made a tripartite distinction, categorization of feminism with different methodological perspective. And according to him, there are three categories. The first category is empirical feminist IR. Empirical feminist IR argues that the generally accepted understanding of knowledge production is pro-male and that women should be included in international institutions and structures. The second distinction he made is feminist standpoint. Feminist standpoint underlines that women's experience in political sphere can provide insights for world politics. And the third distinction is feminist postmodernism, focused on the language we use, which reproduce gender inequality at every moment, and claims that this affects our efforts to make sense of reality. This distinction made by Keohane, however, criticized by the feminist scholars because they thought that Keohane explicitly defends the feminist standpoint during this distinction, but his position has been criticized as proposing a view that can be defended by men without harming their privileges. As an alternative to Keohane classification, Jacques Theroux defines feminist approaches to IR in three basic epistemological differences: empirical, analytic, and normative feminisms. Empirical feminism argues that women's experience has been excluded from international relations studies, and the reason for this exclusion is that male experience is thought to be valid for both genders. Analytical feminism, on the other hand, uses gender as a category to explain the structural aspects of international relations. And the third distinction, normative feminism, theorizes an alternative social and political world. So in all these classifications, either Keohane's classification or Jacques Theroux's classification, so we have seen different epistemologies, and one of them is the normative epistemology, creating a more Robert Koch's critical theories perspective. So they are basically proposing an alternative social and political world from the feminist point of view. So, and as I said, regarding to your question of intersectionality, today when you read the feminist approaches, feminist authors in IR, you will see most of them also focusing on the issues like racial discrimination, colonial experiences, or post-colonialism as part of the feminist discussions, feminist topics.
Thank you, Bezen. Thank you very much. Maybe Ashley, would you like to reply? Maybe do you have like something to reply to that? Would you like to comment before I open to? Okay.
No, I would like to thank Bezen, and I also would like to say hello to Burcu Hoca because I'm also looking forward for her comments about this topic. I'm sure that she has many things to say.
Okay,
Thank you. It's great pleasure to be here, and thank you for organizing this event on a very timely manner, actually. I think there is nothing to add to what Bezen Hoca already said, but maybe it is a good time to bring to discussion that how important it is to have gender perspective to international relations, considering what is happening in Syria and what feminists see there and what traditional IR people see what's happening. From the traditional IR perspective, there is a win there. So they toppled the dictatorship, and then there is something new happening, and it is exciting for everyone except the feminists, right? Because we feminists are very concerned what is going to be there for the women's rights, who is going to come, and how this new state is going to treat women, and how they are going to establish a state based on women's rights, and whether they are going to even respect the human rights. So gender perspective adds a lot in terms of asking this very critical question, whose security we are talking about. And when it comes to women's security, when you change your state-centric perspective to human-centric perspective, then maybe to women-centric perspective, there are so many things to think and worry about. So we feminists are not utopians, as many claim. Actually, we are the realist ones who really see what is going on for the real people and their real concerns out there. So keeping the borders intact is not enough from feminist perspective. We want more. So actually, this is a point of time at the end of the year, we need to emphasize, and we cannot emphasize enough, the importance of positive peace. What we mean by peace is not just the absence of wars. We want prosperity, welfare, human rights, and all development conditions for all. So that's all the thing that I wish for New Year. And thank you for organizing such a great event.
Thank you so much. And
Thank you.
could you please state your name again? Because we didn't. Could you please introduce yourself?
Sure. I am Burcu Sarı Karademir. I am also one of the co-founders of SDG 5 Network, which is also very familiar with this organization. And I think the purpose of this meeting, we are here to we are recently established to make this epistemic justice to all female academics, to make their voices heard in Turkish academia and all over the world. So SDG 5 Network is about working on security, gender, disaster, development issues. So happy to be here and representing my colleagues here. And Aslı Hoca and Bezen Hoca already are in our team, and we will be happy to include you, Effie. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor to have you with us to share your perspectives. And also, I would be very happy and honored to join your network. We had been discussing about a project with Ashley and Bezen about women in political studies in the Eastern Mediterranean, but then, with all other projects we had, so we can certainly join forces. Thank you very much. We are ready to open the floor to questions and comments by the audience. And I'm very excited that I see many, many scholars and students with us from Turkey and around the world. So please, I don't see any hands raised. Please raise your hand if you have a commentary or a question. I know that there are many students of Professor Balamir Coşkun here with us. It's your time to shine with your professor. Okay, I guess they are shy and I don't see any hands raised. So in that occasion, I had to make like a short commentary on how actually feminism is not competing with, as you also mentioned, is not competing with mainstream IR theories, but actually can enrich them. And of course, it challenges their assumptions. And it is broadening their scope and integrating perspectives that emphasize inclusion, as we already discussed, inclusivity, equity, and human-centered security. So starting from realism, I think that it helps really to revisit state-centric power. This is something that also Ashley touched upon, because we know that traditional realism focuses on the state as the primary actor and defines power in terms of military strength. So feminist IR critiques this limited perspective, and by highlighting how gender power relations within states influence international politics. As we already discussed, for instance, gender inequalities within societies can contribute to systemic instability and insecurity. Also, by instilling feminist approaches into the realist research program, we can redefine security, as Bezen already mentioned. So feminist approaches expand actually the concept of security beyond state survival to include human security, focusing on individuals and communities. And this shift enriches realism by addressing non-traditional security threats such as gender-based violence, resource scarcity, and economic insecurity. And also, feminist approaches help realism to incorporate agency in its research program, because it often excludes non-state actors and dismisses the roles of individuals, particularly women and other vulnerable groups. So feminist perspectives emphasize the agency of marginalized actors in global politics, and of course they are revealing how women's participation can influence international relations. When it comes to liberalism, the feminist approach can actually boost equity and inclusion. So liberal IR, as we know, focuses on international cooperation, institutions and human rights. So feminist IR complements this by emphasizing gender equality as a prerequisite for sustainable peace and democracy. And as Bezen mentioned already with the UN Resolution 1325, we highlight the role of women in peace processes, challenging liberalism to prioritize inclusivity within institutions, which is very important, especially now with all the turbulence that we experience in the world and what's going on in the Middle East, in Ukraine, and in Africa and other parts of the world. Also, the feminist approaches are helping to rethink governance and encourage a more critical analysis of global governance, arguing that international institutions often perpetuate gender hierarchies, as Bezen already mentioned. And finally, as it is mentioned, it boosts intersectionality in human rights because while feminism emphasizes individual freedoms, feminist approaches introduce intersectionality, meaning how gender, race, class, and other factors overlap to produce inequality. When it comes to constructivism, the feminist approaches help the research program of constructivism, to view gender as a social contract. So it aligns with constructivism by highlighting that gender roles and power dynamics are socially constructed and reinforced through norms, language, and practices, and also by analyzing how gender norms influence state behavior, diplomacy, and conflict. In order to deepen constructivism's focus on ideational factors. In addition, it helps to analyze identity and norm diffusion, since constructivism explores how norms and identities shape international politics. So the feminist theories contribute by examining how gendered norms like masculinity and femininity influence decision-making, peacekeeping operations, and international negotiations. And also they produce alternative narratives by challenging the dominant narratives in global politics that are portraying men as protectors and women as victims as end-low features in her work. So this critique complements constructivism. Also, even though it's part of critical theory, it is transforming Marxism and other critical theories by highlighting gender label inequalities, linking capitalism and patriarchy, and addressing structural inequalities. And of course, it is expanding post-colonial, the study of post-colonial IR, as it already mentioned, intersectionality in post-colonial contexts, amplifying marginalized voices and challenging Eurocentrism. And Bezen mentioned about how different methodological approaches and also through the UN resolution, stress green sustainability, green integrity and sustainability, environmental integrity and green sustainability. So, of course, feminist ecological perspectives intersect with environmental theories by exploring ecofeminism, which links the exploitation of women and nature to patriarchal systems, and by reframing environmental security, as traditional environmental security approaches tend to focus on state interest and geopolitical competition. So they shift this focus to community-based solutions and the role of women as agents of environmental sustainability and resilience, fostering bottom-up approaches. So thank you. This was my very short, intervention just to help to see that actually the feminist approaches are not competing, but they could be an excellent tool to update mainstream IR theory. Maybe you have a comment on that, maybe a question.
You made a really comprehensive case of this complementarity between the feminist approaches and the mainstream theories. So I'm not just, I don't want just talking about the theories, but here we have two powerful tools, policy tools. One of them is UN Security Council Resolution, Women, Peace and Security Agenda. So even though it's not just one textbook, so or one text of the Security Council resolution, they have 10 different resolutions complementary to each other, and it's kind of guidebook for us, yeah, guidebook for states, governments, basically what you need to do to include gender lens in their own policies, including conflict resolution, peacekeeping, peace building, or even their policies about the refugees, refugee policies, etc. So even international humanitarian aid policies. So these are all the UN's tools, Sustainable Development Goals, also the United Nations resolutions on the Women, Peace and Security Agenda. So I'm a little bit like the person who really support United Nations as a global governance institution, because we have United Nations blueprints or the guidelines in terms of sustainable development goals, also in terms of the 1325. So we have the guidelines. The only thing we need to do is to include this feminist approach, feminist lenses of that United Nations offering us into the real policies, into the practice. So a little bit this feminist foreign policy, countries who are applying foreign policy is trying to do this a little bit. But the most powerful part, the most uh, favorable policy area that are choose to be more feminist is humanitarian aid, humanitarian assistance part. So a couple of weeks ago in my gender and politics class with all these guys and my students, so we discussed the gender and international development policies, and how feminist international development policies actually work in favor of the countries who are dealing with the development issues and in a real sense. I mean, if you include the feminist lens or the feminist international development policy, which really help on the field. So it's not just giving money or establishing the bridges or the fountains, etc., or anything, the infrastructure, but inclusion of the woman in these international development policies, international development aid projects. So basically, really help these developing countries to do something for themselves. So it creates an ownership and it empowers the woman over there. So it's really one of the beneficial fields, or one of the working fields for the feminist foreign policy approach, the feminist international development. So this is really good to see. At least we have some fields that we can, in practice, apply feminist approaches in terms of policy terms.
Thank you very much, Bezen. This is extremely important, especially this time period. As your colleague mentioned, in Syria, with what's going on in Syria. So yeah, we have to always ask how how do gender dynamics shape global power structures, such as military conflicts, peacekeeping operations, and economic globalization. This is very important. Of course, in order to achieve positive peace is extremely difficult, but at least to make the first step toward post-conflict reconstruction and a more sustainable environment where even negative peace can flourish at the beginning. Ashley, yes, please.
Oh, that's me. I just want to actually both ask a question to Bezen and also maybe add a little bit comment what she actually started. Because what I feel like is that we are talking about feminist theory, not as an alternative here, not, creating a new platform for itself with new ontology and new discussions and new ideas. But it's like actually feminism, as Bezanius, is a lens that all the theories need. So, of course, it is not like recreating the whole structure of IR, but it is like giving the missing link here, which is about not focusing on only the security of states and the idea of state security, which is created in a masculine way. But what we need is like, to broaden the perspective and also include the real security, which is not only the absence of war, but also the security of all humans, which includes women and also the small people of these women who are the children. So obviously, it's not only about women, but also the mothers of young people. So we should, I guess, reorganize all our approaches about the theories all over. So it's like feminist theory is recalibrating the problematic and limited view of all theories. So if we consider maybe like this, feminism has, yes, when I say like that, it sounded maybe a huge task here. But I guess if we try to understand what feminism is trying to do here, then we can, I guess, broaden our perspective through feminism. And as Burcu Hoca rightly mentioned, that we can understand the problem in Syria even better than the mainstream IR theories, because we need to also understand the humanitarian crisis in the region and the possible, actually, the potential of it through our new lens, which is feminist theory here. I don't know if maybe Bezen Hocam can also comment on this point.
In the case of Syria, I'm taking from the last sentences of you. In the case of the Syria, we need the inclusion of women more than ever. Now, if as far as I understand from the field, from the scholars, realist scholars or international relations scholars evaluating the situation in Syria right now. So most probably in a medium term, there will be a peace making process will start among the different fighting groups in Syria. So we need women to include in this peace process during the negotiations, also during the table actually, and both on the track 1, track 2, track 3 negotiations, we need women to include. And second issue is the external actors like Turkey, for example. What we are talking here in Turkey is the contributing in the restructuring of Syria after the peace comes. So in this restructuring part, we also need women. So we also need the woman experience that will tell us what kind of villages we need to establish in Syria to make them feel more comfortable or feel more free or feel more secure, and they can live in human dignity within this newly structured country. So humanitarian assistance, humanitarian aid again. So we need to reconsider the woman's role. So are we going to empower the woman to be part of all these processes, peace building, peacemaking, conflict resolution, maybe the community level conflict resolution in their own villages? So we need women more than ever in the case of Syria from now on. And when we back to your first point about the lens, I I was talking about the feminist stance when I was talking about the practical part of the feminism. I mean, the feminists, foreign policy feminists, the more taking the decision makers or the policy makers taking the feminist lens when they wanted to do the right thing, in particular in the humanitarian development, humanitarian aid or the international development projects. But in the case of the theories, your comment also is fairly explained that if we hear Effie's comments complementarity of the theories and your comment about that, so maybe it's not just about the theories, but also in the methodologically. Methodologically, if you or the data collection part. So when you look at the feminist scholars, they are on the field. They are collecting data from the field. They are working with the woman. They are actually analyzing. So they are more using the sociological or the anthropological data, anthropological ways to collect data. So if as a scholar you are with the groups you are analyzing, so it is also very kind of fruitful for the policy making. It's not just about for the sake of the academia, for the sake of the theories, or for the sake of the writing very nice impact factor papers, but these feminist scholars, most of them, and basically the legendary Cynthia Anna, for example. So what she is doing is she worked with or she lived with them, and then she collected data, she analyzed their position from the field because she knew that their needs, their positions, so these power relations on the field. So it's really important to also include feminist approaches into the data collection and also for the production of scientific data as well as the policy related data.
And I think that this brings us to the problem, because I had noted here as you were speaking, of course, implementation challenges is we're talking about feminist foreign policy, but what you talked about right now is about how, of course, resource allocation, but actually the theoretical versus the practical gap. And we see that we have like we're talking about Syria, where it's essentially a conservative patriarchal society, even under the new regime that took over. And even though feminist theories critique patriarchal conservative societies, and they do not only advocate for feminist rights, but also for the rights of the LGBTQ community and other minority groups in these societies. There is a problem in order to translate these critiques into, it's a great challenge, these critiques into concrete policies, you know, especially in societies like this. So many of I have the sense that many of the initiatives and the talk about the feminist foreign policy becomes just symbolic than transformative. So this is a very big issue that also we need to discuss in a theoretical, methodological, and epistemological level, and then from a policy maker's point of view. And one of the major, from what you just discussed, Bezen, I think another great challenge is the resistance to mainstreaming gender. And this is very prominent in Syria right now, right? So we have, there is a big challenge for theorists and practitioners to break those institutional barriers. But how are you going to do it in societies like that? It may take like so many years. In the meantime, you will have like so women and children and other gay groups or other groups suffer. Gender mainstreaming across foreign policy institutions require changes to long-standing processes and norms. And here, the recalibration of theoretical research programs is extremely important. And also, of course, the cultural and political resistance that we encounter during the post-conflict reconstruction. So I don't know, maybe this is like a comment, but also a question. How can you break the institutional barriers? How can you how can you break this resistance to gender mainstreaming, especially to this kind of conservative societies?
Okay, let's do another seminar on that. It's a huge
It's a
discussion.
big elephant in the
Yeah,
room,
it's
because so far it's like theory, but since we have to implement, and we spoke about the UN, the
yeah.
2000 UN resolution, I mean, we cannot just stay in the theoretical world, it has to become practice. Please.
Sure. Yeah, in my opinion, so women from the very old, yeah, the old times, from the very beginning of the women's movements, they find a way. So this is one of the kind of strong parts of the being woman. So how do they win the suffragette rights, for example? So at that time they never imagined that women could vote and a woman could be a candidate for the political party, etc. But they find a way. So they fought their own wars in England, in America, in Turkey, or etc., in Greece. So whatever. But here also we need to trust women, local women, Syrian women in our case. So they will find their way. So yes, there are both cultural structures, cultural barriers, and also the security barriers, because it's not a secure country right now. But eventually, women will find their way into at least they open a space for them for conflict resolution. It could be in their villages. So even in Yemen, most recently I was working on the peace process in the Middle East and how women involved. Yes, you don't see any woman on the negotiation tables, but in the background, in the communities, you will see many women negotiators. They are uh, resolving the conflicts within the communities, or they are contributing in the empowerment of women in their own community. So, if, of course, from today to tomorrow, we cannot see Syrian women to solve all these problems and then become part of the solution, but eventually they will find their way. So it's not us, it's not our duty, or it's not our responsibility. Yes, of course, we will with giving example, being an example of for them, or showing the UN structure, or showing the other practices from other countries. But it is on them that they will find their way.
Thank you, Bezen. I would like to comment on that this presupposes a certain degree of liberty. So we have to take this for granted. We shouldn't take this for granted, I'm sorry. So how we are going to create this, web of liberty in this kind of societies to allow this kind of groups to raise their voices and challenge the mainstream narrative and the local power structures. Of course, this is a big discussion. Let me see if there are any other hands raised. I don't see any hands raised. Oh, yes, Mr. Hassan, please.
I would like to comment by saying that, you talked about the practical implementation of the theory, but I would raise the concern also that on a lot of the ground level kind of uh, opportunities or ground level availabilities, practical implementation of those policies become increasingly difficult the more you enter into countries or regions that are very much dominated by war or a lot of political and economic disruption and dysfunction. So I feel like the implementation and practical kind of usage of those policies works better in countries where we have cooperative governments to begin with, right? We've seen that in New Zealand before, also with a lot of women's right cooperation and collaboration because there's a set of systems already in place. But I feel like for countries such as Pakistan or Syria or many other countries in Southeast Asia, since the nation or the political structure doesn't help to begin with, it makes it very much more difficult to practically implement those policies, if that makes sense.
Mhm. Thank you very much. This is an excellent comment on that. Let's see.
I
Bezen,
couldn't find the button to
yes,
raise hand
please.
because
Yes.
I updated my Zoom. I just want to remind what happened in Afghanistan.
Mhm.
I'm not optimistic about, Syrian women are gonna find their ways because we have to talk about real politics here. Because if it's not on the agenda of the international community, and if it's not on the agenda of the regional powers, like Turkey is one of the key actors now interfering in Syria's, state building process, I think it is a huge role from Turkish feminist academic community to pressure the government to, include women's voices or to have women in the process. Otherwise, if there is no outside pressure from Turkey or other regional forces like I don't know, Russia, maybe United States, maybe European Union from now on, during the state establishment process, it is very important for these actors to have some kind of recognition. So to get the recognition as Taliban did, they will have to grant some kind of women's rights, or they will have to tame their passion to restrict women's rights. So it is not just to rely on the domestic realm to women in Syria, but also to we also have this responsibility as international community, the feminists here, IR scholars, or the students here, to pressure our liberal, so-called liberal governments to have this agenda of protecting women's rights in Syria as well. Otherwise, if it drops from the agenda as it did in Afghanistan, there will be a huge tragedy in our neighborhood.
This is an excellent comment, and it's not only the responsibility of regional actors such as Turkey, it's actually the responsibility of the whole West, that it coins itself as the proponent of all those liberal values, especially the European Union that wants to have this very ambitious foreign and security policy, and as a global actor. So definitely it's the responsibility of everybody to send NGOs and other practitioners on the ground, because feminist foreign policy usually encounters three main challenges that are very prominent according to this commentary. We have data gaps, and this is going especially with governments like Taliban and very conservative, Islamist governments. This is always the point. We have lack of clear metrics, and there is always the long-term versus short-term gains. So we see that, and happens with Western governments. In order to appease public opinion, they may seek quick, visible outcomes to validate, their policies in collaboration in the beginning with the emerging power structure in these failed states. Which are leading to, without leading to long-term solutions. So this is a big problem, in my opinion. And thank you very much for bringing it up to our attention. Ashley, maybe do you have, maybe a commentary on all these discussions thus far?
I actually would like to hear if any other questions or comments are coming from the audience, because I'm sure that, as Bezen Hocam said, there may be some students here. Of course, they shouldn't feel like, they should be I don't know, they should understand everything about all theories, but that can be interesting how they actually see women, men, and politics. I mean, if they feel any, I don't know, problematic or missing part in any theory when it comes to gender issues or security. I mean, again, it doesn't need to be uh, something like a commentary question, but it can be interesting to hear actually how students see and comment, interpret what we are saying here. Yeah.
Of course. Yes, Miss Pithula, please.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all for your comments and your insights. I would like to ask Ms. Bezen actually mentioned before about Syria that it's not on us to help them put feminism in the state how they will create the state, and then it was mentioned that well maybe West should participate in this, and I would like to ask. Is there a risk to be considered again, like, oh, here comes the West again, to participate in our internal business, to westernize our culture and all that? Is there a risk of that?
There is always the risk that the West's intervention might be seen negatively. But I didn't want to be misunderstood about it's not us. I mean, what I mean by saying that, of course, it's our responsibility, the women outside the Syria, also the Western states government, to put pressure on the new government in Syria to do the right thing. But any model or any framework that we directly propose to the new government or the new regime in Syria most probably will be seen as an intervention of the West, because they are in the case of Syria, they are conservative leaders, and they have a different agenda than the liberal Western agenda. So what we could do actually put the pressure on Syrian regime, as Burcu Hoca said, through the legitimate actors or the credible actors in their eyes. It could be like maybe the Vladimir Putin. I don't know who is legitimate on their eyes, or the Turkey. Turkey can play a role on that. But what we do from the West as scholars or as the United Nation frameworks is just to give them some examples, I mean, some leads that can rely on. I mean, besides the political pressure, so we can have this share the feminist notions with the sisters in Syria. And most of the Syrian women, many of them are outside the Syria. They are living and they are being part of the Western communities or Western societies. Many Syrian women lives in Turkey, and I'm sure they have some ideas about how a life, a freedom, and the empowerment could be for themselves, so they can imagine a better future in Syria for themselves or for their daughters and granddaughters, for example. What do you say, Burcu Hocam?
Hocam, it is hard to imagine. It's for sure it's a very hard journey. It will be tough for everyone living there, and it will be tough for us to watch from here because even though, for instance, they include women, we have to ask which women. which feminists we are talking about, which women we are talking about. So we have generations of feminists who see just the inclusion of women as part of women's empowerment. But if those are the women who are the, sustainers of the patriarchy and militarism itself, do we count it as a feminist improvement? Or if they select those women who are not pro gender equality, pro equality, but pro patriarchy, pro suppression, pro authoritarianism, would we count them as, as equal feminists or women? So I think here we have to also talk about which kind of feminism we are mentioning, which kind of women we are talking about. So it is quite important for me to address this as well. So we are not against the establishment of the peaceful state. Actually, we are pro-state as feminists, but we also have qualification regarding which type of state we want. And we also have qualification on which type of feminists we want on the table. So it is not enough for us to see any kind of women just because they are women. We want women who supports change for better, emancipatory change for all people, not just for women. Because feminism is not about liberating women. Feminism is about liberating men, women, men, boys, LGBTQ plus community, all of it. So it will be hard, and the demands are, high stakes. So I don't know whether we will be able to, see in our lifetime, but we will all, of course, keep reminding what we want.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chamo, if I pronounce, please
Yes, hello.
correct me. I'm sorry if I pronounced it wrong.
Okay. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, just like Hojam said, I think it's more than just it's more than it's about women. I think overall in Syria, I think now that Israel is also like taking like entrance on Israel, I mean on Syria, sorry, I think we should really take voice. We should like help them in any way possible because now Israel is taking any opportunity to just enter whatever land they can lay their hands on. So I really think that whatever Syria can take help, we need to help them in any kind of way.
Thank you. Ashley?
Thank you. I would like to actually just, of course, I agree with all of the things what are said here. So what I understand from these discussions is that it's not enough just to include women in the picture. Because as Burcu Hocam very nicely actually highlighted, it's about which women are included. I mean, if they are going to be just recreating the usual muscular and identities, and then seeing politics from the perspective which discriminates women in the long run, then it would not help us to include those specific women. But what we need here is actually the change of mentality. Then it's not about actually women. So feminism is not about women. It is about everybody, because a woman with a masculinity privilege in her mind would not be actually really reshaping our re-gendering IR. It should be most of the time men who has actually the feminist perspective and see that discriminative perspective in IR. So we need that kind of outlook. So it makes me to consider what we are conceptually talking here, because obviously we need, for me, not an ontological IR reshaping, but an epistemological one. So it's not only about the units, man, woman, or who is talking in practice or every day, I mean, policy-wise, but it is about the epistemology, that how we can actually pursue the world from a different perspective, which everybody can be included. So that everybody is everybody. It's not woman and man. It is everybody. So it's only about changing the mentality. So from, of course, this point of view, feminism is not just a theory. And even I said lens, maybe it's not only a lens, it has a big task, which is why sometimes actually people are kind of afraid of feminism because they feel like it has a hidden agenda, changing the mechanisms going on and happening. But maybe that's what we need. Maybe that's what we all need to actually leave our posts, leave our jobs and all the titles we have, which was created from a given point of view, and then reconsider what we are really talking here. The security, sovereignty, borders, Syria, Turkey. So that's what actually maybe we need here. I know it sounds like a big job, but I guess we should start somewhere.
So you start a revolution hocam.
Yeah, I sounded like that. Why
Give,
not? Why
give
not
us
hocam?
mujeres.
Yeah, I felt the soul in me coming up actually.
Thank you, Ashley.
Hocam,
I
end of
agree
the
with
year.
you. I'm sorry for interrupting. Did
So sorry, it's end of the year and we are all fed up with all the problems and we definitely need a revolution. I back up.
Very good. We are together in this.
And you know what? I truly liked what Ashley said, and I second that because we should we women should stop thinking in divisive ways or maybe a la carte and acknowledge the universality of being a female and how it is actually the center of existence. Because there was made this comment about Israel before. I'm not taking any sides, but in this kind of discussion, we need to acknowledge all sides. Like, for example, October 7th, there were females that also were victims there, and actually very liberal females that were standing behind the Palestinians, and I know that for a fact. They were actually struggling for the rights, the human rights of the Palestinians, and for a more peaceful coexistence between the two societies. So we shouldn't, it should start from academics and practitioners and instill this to students when we speak about feminism, that we shouldn't think in divisive ways or a la carte ways, but we should acknowledge the universality of being a human being first. And if we want to talk about women, the universality of women, because they're special, I would say, they're special creatures on the planet. We give life, and they should be protected, acknowledged, and cherished in every way possible. And with that, unless you have any other comment, because we came to the end of our I'm very happy that it was such a successful seminar. Ashley, maybe would you like to have a last commentary before I give the floor to Bezen, please?
Thank you. Again, I mean, I just would like to thank you, Effie, and also Alex for organizing as a team. It's always a pleasure to work with you, collaborate with you. And I would like to thank our dear distinct voice, Bezen Balamir Coşkun, for her really insightful talk, because that's what we needed. So it was really nice to have you as our guest. Thank you so much for coming. And also our nice actually audience for their great comments and questions, and specifically Burcu Hocam here. Your comments are always valuable. It's really nice to have you here. So thank you so much.
Bezen, would you like
Thank,
to have a
thank you.
last comment?
you, Effie, Aslı, and all the audience and organizers. So it was a privilege for you to speak about all the things I was thinking from the like last 2 or 3 months, because this semester I'm teaching these students gender and politics, and I'm really living in the all aspects of the gender and politics. And it was a really nice way to summarize and share with you here, and also some of my students here. So also I'm very glad to introduce you, Effie, Burcu Hoca, Aslı, to my students. So it was also an honor for me to be here and also introduce you with my students. Thank you all.
Thank you, Bezen. And also, I have to ask Burcu if she would like to have like a last commentary. I'm very happy that we met and she joined us today. She make like all these interesting comments, please.
Thank you. I think everything has been said, and I wish everyone, peaceful, personally, nationally, internationally peaceful New Year. And it was a great pleasure to meet you, Effie, and of course, Aslı Hocam and Bezen Hocam, always happy to be together. Thanks a lot to such a great audience. I know they are listening there. So it's great to have students at this hour of the day. So hope to see you in other events.
Of course.
Thank you.
Of course. And in my turn, I would like to thank very much our distinctive voices, our distinctive voice, as very well Ashley put it, and a very good friend that I have learned a lot from her, and she has supported me so much when I started, my first steps in the publishing world. Dr. Bezen Coşkun Balamir Bezen has been an honor to host you, and of course to meet your students and host them here and learn again from you. My dear co-host and co-organizer, Ashley, for her support always, and of course, Alex, who couldn't be with us today. Burcu, it's a great honor to meet you, and I'm looking forward to joining your network, hopefully, and hosting you again. Maybe we could organize an event again with women. There are so many possibilities. The students and the scholars in the audience, and since this is the last seminar of the research program for this year, I would like to wish to everybody, those of course who are celebrating this time period, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah. If you do not celebrate, happy winter break, the most joyful New Year's festivities, and a very happy and prosperous and creative to 2025. So we're looking forward with my co-host and co-organizers to see you in the new year and continue the seminars and continue to learn from each other and exchange views and insights. Thank you so much, everybody. I wish you have a good evening and happy
Thank
New Year.
you.
Bye.
Have a good evening. Bye.
Bye. Happy New Year
Happy New
already.
Year.
Bye.